My biggest fear with working with Andre before we worked together is I knew Andre by reputation. Of course, we all do. And there was a certain persona. I thought, okay, if he's really like that, I really like this guy. But I've worked with far too many people over the years, names that I'm sure your audience knows, where the person on the stage and the person behind the scenes, not the same person. The biggest relief was when we started to actually work on a project together, and I realized, okay, this guy is exactly who I thought he was from his public persona. And when later to deconstruct the wisdom of that, it was like, well, of course, it's so much easier if we both just show up as ourselves. Is in this, if you like what we're doing, you're never going to have a bad surprise because there's no thing that's different later.
Boom, 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 boom. What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast with your boys, Mount Wolf and Joe Fear. Check it. Welcome back to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. Today, our guest is another sort of legend in our industry. André Chaperon and his partner, Shawn Twing, are joining us. Now, André was probably one of the first info products I remember buying back around 2009, 2010, when I was first kind of getting into, not getting into it, but diving deeper into the digital marketing world. The Autoresponder Madness course kept on popping up. Everybody kept talking about this course. I don't remember exactly what year I stumbled across it, but this was like the gold standard for how to do your email marketing through storytelling and things like that. And that was André Chaperon's course. And that sort of helped him make a name for himself in the industry and become one of the leading experts on email marketing in the digital marketing world. And so we are super lucky and super excited to be able to bring André and his partner Shawn onto this episode today and kind of catch up and talk about what they're doing now. I had the opportunity of meeting and hanging out with André several years back at a mastermind. I think we might touch on that in this episode. I can't remember if we did or not. I'm pretty sure we did. But anyway, kind of stayed connected with André over the years and finally brought him back around to talk about what he's up to these days in his marketing career. And we talk a lot about their concepts of emergent marketing and the durable business model. Those are kind of big concepts that they're teaching now. How to emergent marketing, how to take different marketing skills, and when they kind of come together, this sort of emerging marketing thing happens. And I'm not explaining it well. These guys are going to explain it way better than I could. And then the durable business has very specific elements that they teach. And so they're going to break down their concepts of emergent marketing and the durable business and what they're working on now. And then, we couldn't pass up the opportunity while we had them to talk about how to become a better writer of stories, how to do email marketing better, how to do automations in email better. So this let's kind of consider this episode broken up into sort of two halves, right? The first half of this episode, we're talking about emergent marketing. We're talking about the durable business concept. We're talking about what needs to happen in a business, how to get customers, when to give value for free versus when to charge. We spend the first half really diving into that topic, and then the kind of second half talking about how to become better at emails, how to tell stories, how to do segmentation with your emails. And we get a little more in the weeds and talk a little more about the sort of tactical elements of what makes everything they're doing work. So we were just really, really pumped to even be having this conversation. We sort of broke out of our normal processes and podcast recording. We recorded this kind of earlier in our morning on a day when we normally wouldn't record podcasts because we can't pass up the opportunity to talk to these guys. So you're going to love this episode with André Chaperon and Shawn Twing, and you're probably going to want the notes on it because we do cover a lot of ground in this. So if you go to flowchartgroup.com, so at flowchartgroup.com, you can join our Facebook group. It's a private group just for listeners of Hustle and Flowchart. And when you join it, it'll ask you for your email. If you decide to give us your email, we will, for free, send you the notes to this episode within 2 weeks of it going live. So if you're hearing this episode 2 months after it was released and you go join our group, you're going to get free access to whatever notes were released corresponding with the newest episodes. But if you get them within 2 weeks of this going live over at flowchartgroup.com, we'll send you the notes. And even if you kind of pass that deadline, you can always email us and we'll probably hook you up with the notes anyway, because we be like that sometimes. But go to flowchartgroup.com, join the group. We want to hook you up. So go do that, and I'm done blabbering. Let's go talk to Andre and Shawn.
All right, Andre, Shawn, we're live. How you guys doing today?
Doing
Great,
well.
man. Thanks.
Right
Top of the
on.
world.
Yeah, well, I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation. Like we were talking about, we followed you, Andre, for a long time, and I know Matt, you guys met a long time ago, and I think we were actually recently. It was George Bryant. Basically, he was like, "You guys got to have Andre on again," and because I think you interviewed Andre years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
We've been really reworking all of our email systems based off of a lot of the principles that you have put out there. And now Shawn, you're partnered up with Andre, and it seems like this perfect duo. You got the traffic and this whole different perspective there, but the way that you guys bring it together, I'm so fascinated in the perspective, like the way that you actually do marketing and think about marketing. I think that's going to be fascinating in this conversation, probably some storytelling and how that applies to the whole, lot there, the spectrum of everything here. So I guess to start, I think it'd be fascinating to get kind of the background of both of you combined more than individually, and how you guys came together, because you guys have been doing this separately for many years. But what's the story of combining forces here?
Yeah.
If we tell that story, we're going to have to tell the truth to get it right. So there was this time, it was a bar in Colombia, and there was a tiger. Maybe we'll just tell the real story.
Oh, man. Who's going to go?
Andre's gonna go. He's the storyteller.
No pressure then. Well, Shawn was a customer of mine. That's I think how we entered into my sphere of influence, and from there, we just, because our interests overlap so much, and we didn't realize this from the outset, obviously, because Shawn was he was a customer, he was consuming. I think he bought Autoresponder Madness and Sphere of Influence, and I had spun up this community called the 1% Club. And Shawn was inside there, and I think that's how the whole love affair started. Just bit by bit over the course of 2 years, I think, or 3 years. It was gradual, and then at some point we got a mutual client, and I think that was the first time that Shawn and I started to work together, like physically, actually work together, and that was an amazing experience in terms of what we learned about each other and what we do and what came out of that. So there was this emergence of thought and ideas that came as a result of the collaboration, and I think that's where everything kind of struck it for us.
Nice. Well, I'm curious, what sort of like roles do each of you play? So, for instance, in our business, I'm kind of more the tech guy behind the scenes, building ads and landing pages and that kind of stuff. Joe's more the networker, talker, speaker, goes out on stages a lot, does the podcast, all that kind of stuff. So he's more outward facing. I'm more inward, kind of building stuff. I'm curious how your dynamic works.
I think we've
never thought about that. Right? Who does the work around here anyway? Someone's got to do something.
Well, both of us we're writers, so that's our love, and so neither one of us can do all the writing because it's unfair on the other one. But the thing that we really learned was that when our writing came together, what came out of that, that thing that we create is different and better than both of us put together. So I think that was the moment where we thought that this is kind of an interesting thing to explore, and that's how the whole journey started about a year ago.
And it kind of seems like with you guys together, you have this, so like emergent marketing is something you guys have been talking about a lot. So I want you guys it'd be cool to have you guys kind of define it, but it seems like the components underneath that, like the three phases, awareness, engagement, and then conversion, it's kind of wrapped up with both your guys' superpowers, with the storytelling, the writing from both of you, your sides, but then, Shawn on the traffic side, which is really that awareness factor. Do you want to break that down and maybe individually kind of talk about the pieces, maybe those three components and then we can kind of splinter off into some other pieces there.
Yeah, I'll jump in that one and give Andre time to think about saying something smarter. The thing that's interesting about the collaboration, so to answer the roles question and this question simultaneously, is that we both like to think about this stuff really deeply. And we've got 40 plus years, 45, 48 years together, combined doing this work. But we're at that stage now where we like to think about it really, really deeply. And what ends up happening is it's like improv. One of us has a thought and we'll share it, and the other one just naturally is trying to see what's right in that thought and then add a little something to it, and then it builds and it builds, and it goes from like this simplicity to something that becomes really complex. And in a sense, we in a moment we sense the complexity, and then we try to reverse it. We're like, okay, we've gone from the simple to the complex, but now we got to go from the complex back to the simple so that we can share it with our audience, right? And it's, my favorite quote is, it's Oliver Wendell Holmes, said, I wouldn't give a fig for the simplicity on this side of complexity, but I'd give my right arm for the simplicity on the far side of complexity. So a lot of what we're doing is we're starting with something simple, like this, emergent marketing really started with some pretty simple stuff. Then we make it really just complicated, and it's just a mess. And the thinking then is, okay, what are the kernels of truth in this? What could we share with our audience that's timeless, that they could, rather than give them a fish, we could teach them how to fish with this so that they could understand a principle that will serve them well. And it's just that what our audience sees is us doing that every single day. That's just what we're doing constantly, is complicating, simplifying, complicating, and then sharing. And we figured this out the other day. We created, I think, 115,000 words of free content last year. That's just us thinking out loud. Like it's emails, it's free courses. That's what we're doing all the time. And then the courses become polished expressions of certain ideas. And really what you described, emergent marketing is a set of principles, as are the three parts of a business: awareness, engagement, and conversion. All of that came from going through enormous amounts of thought to realize that was the irreducible, what lies underneath, that somebody could hear that and say, okay, I understand this differently now. Long answer to a short question. That's the fun we have every day.
Well, it makes a lot of sense why you guys are partners then, because that's how Matt and I, we don't always go from complex back to simple, in that whole progression, but we will if we have to go on stage somewhere and present our ideas. Yeah, it forces us at that point. But the fact that you can kind of ping pong back between each other, it seems like you have a similar brain, but maybe specialties in different ways. Break down those three layers of emergent marketing a little bit further, like each of those, just to kind of set the scene, because I think it was very important seeming, right when I was digging into all the content. So kind of like what awareness is.
So really everything that we do is the foundation systems theory. And the thing that I bought into, I've been two decades in this game, running an agency. And the thing I bought into earlier in my career was that optimization was a linear process, right? So you send traffic to a landing page and you get some result. You get a certain click-through rate. You get something happens. That's awareness. People don't know you exist. Now they do. So they click on something and they go there. And let's say that your click-through rate on your ad is 10%. You think, okay, well, I can make everything better if I go from 10% to 12%. That's linear thinking. And you make your funnel and you make your steps and you do the math. And, if you double, the math gets really wonky. And if you double improvements through a 4-part process, you 16x your outcome. And I bought into it, and it's a lie. It's not true. The world does not work that way. It should. It looks like it should, but the world actually is a complicated system. And what Andre and I independently stumbled on and now reinforce with each other all the time is that there are forces collaborating with each other in different ways. And those three forces, and they all influence each other, and none of them is sufficient on its own. So if you can imagine a business that's only awareness, right? So you get tons of traffic and that's it, no business, right? So if I said to you tomorrow, do you want 1 million visitors to your site? And you say, yeah, absolutely. So, okay, well, here's the caveat. You can't opt in, you can't generate leads, and you can't sell anything. You still want 1 million visitors. You say, well, why would I care? Right. So The second part is engagement. Engagement is when your audience takes a step closer to you too. It doesn't have to be opting in, but that's really what we think about. The primary thing is that somebody raises their hand and says, this thing I've found that I've now been made aware of is interesting enough that I'm willing to take a step toward it. And sometimes, there are ways to do that where it's something bright and shiny. Here's the PDF ebook, here's the whatever it is, here's the free video series. We've all seen it, but that's engagement. And engagement can just be the sharing of attention. Someone can read your 15,000 word article. That's engagement, right? They're giving their time. And then conversion is that moment where they become an actual paying customer. We have a philosophy of principle that we work on. We make customers before money changes hands. So we kind of violate our own rules a little bit, but that's not really that important. But if you pull any of those things out, you don't have a business. It doesn't work. It only works when all three are present. And the thing that emerges as a result, the texture of those three things. None of them makes the business. It's how they relate. So if you have a really cheesy curiosity-based headline ad that's clickbait, and you send some people to a 15,000 word multi-page pre-sale site, it's not congruent. That gets really weird. But when you start thinking about how do they all relate together, so maybe you have a long form Facebook ad that's the first page of a multi-page pre-sale site that goes into a soap opera sequence email. Now there's this emergent property. That's where emergent marketing came from. Emergent things happen that no single part of the system creates. What creates them is all of the parts of the system working together. So we have that systems view instead of that reductionist linear view. And that just mainly because it matches our experience of what we've seen over the last 20 plus years. All right, Andre, say something smarter now.
Yeah. So what's happened as a result of that is that series has become our soap opera sequence. So every single prospect that comes into our world now has to go through this sequence of emails that unpacks that idea of the world through our lens and how we believe business should be done. So at the end of that, either someone's going to be pulled towards us. It's like, oh yes, I want more of this stuff. That all resonates with me. Or they're going to think, yeah, these two guys are just fucking mad. So
we can swear. All right.
Whatever the hell you want.
Oh, sweet. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andre.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, that you said, because it's true that things are typically done in a linear fashion, but it's just like what you were saying. You go start with something simple, then make it complex, and then you simplify it again. It seems like folks mainly just understand the simple and maybe not the complexities and all these components that are actually involved in marketing. Whereas you guys have thought deep on that and kind of said, no, it's actually this bundle of a lot of stuff happening here. Mm-hmm. But it's just been simplified. Maybe that's where the linear thinking kind of comes from in a lot of senses with the funnels and, all the steps that we see out there. Just a thought.
Lots of things, Andre. Oh, go ahead, Andre.
No, you first.
I think something that we do intuitively that I think helps is that one of the questions we're subconsciously asking ourselves all the time when we get new information is like, what are the implications of this new information? And going to the second, third, fourth, fifth order consequences of it. So probably the best example I can share, which I think we share in the 5-part Emergent Marketing series, is last 2019, I was at Copy Chief Live. We were at the speakers dinner and I got to sit next to Dean Jackson, which is just a treat. Dean's just a genius. And, Dean was really kind of going into depth about something he shared publicly in other places, which is that when he's analyzed his clients' sales performance, one of the things that he discovered is 80% of the sales happen after 90 days. So if you can imagine, we get on day one, 1,000 people opt in. Of the people who become customers after that initial engagement, according to Dean's research, 80% of them become customers after 90 days. So we can hear something like that. Oh, wow, that's interesting. But it could be, what we love to call TBU, true but useless, right? But when we start thinking about it, it's like, well, wait a minute. If that's true, how would we change our approach to things knowing that? And the reality is You have 4 times the value in your list after 90 days than you do in the first 90 days. So why in the world would you try to sell everybody in the first 90 days? You wouldn't do it. You would immediately, the first implication of Dean's research in that point is realizing that marketing is a long game. Most people buy between months 4 and 18. Once you know that, you go, okay, well, you re-engineer your thinking for the long game. You're not thinking about how can I get the most sales in the first 90 days. You're thinking, how can I get the most sales, period? And most of them will happen later. And that's a lot of what we're doing is we're looking at something and we're asking ourselves, what are the implications of this? If it's true, what does it mean? And that just leads us down so many rabbit holes. And that's where all the complexity forms. And then we pop up periodically and think, okay, now there's something there. We're pulling on a thread, and then we figure out what that thread is, and we put some words around it. And as a writing coach we work with likes to say, we put words in front of periods, and off we go. Right? That's really what we do. Words in front of periods.
Yeah, and then one of the other nuances that we do is we love to learn in public. So we always take in something simple, make it complex, and then try to make sense of it. And then once we feel that we've made enough sense of it, we'll then write an email, send it out to everybody, and say, "What do you think?" And that creates this interesting dynamic where we're always sharing our best thinking with them. And then as a result of that, down the line, stuff happens. So we're always doing this with the audience. So they're always part of this journey with us. So we've had, we have long, customers that have been with us for over a decade, and some of them have been on this journey like the whole time. And it really has an impact. But then they'll get insights. So they'll have this emergent insight, and they'll share it with us. And then it's like, didn't think of that, but yeah, that's cool. And then that'll be reintegrated into our thinking.
No, that's fascinating. And it's creating super fans at the end of the day. It seems like, if they're hanging around with you for a decade, they're not the type that are going to be, who are these two guys send me emails every day or all the time and unsubscribe. It's like, no, you're actually taking them on this journey along the whole path. And it seems like they're coming in probably at the right time, or you have all this content that allows people to kind of make a decision. And like you said, kind of become a customer before, or make a conversion before actually exchanging money. It seems like in a lot of cases.
It makes everything easier because you're not trying to figure out, if you try to have content that's free content, quote unquote, and then you have your paid content, and then you're trying to always figure out what do you give people for free? It's so much extra thinking. So we just, when we're creating things, we're just creating at the highest level of quality we can around a certain question. So earlier last year in February of 2020, we each did simultaneous. We like to create forcing mechanisms for ourselves. So we said, okay, starting next week, we're going to do a 10-part free series. Andre did email, I did paid traffic every day for 10 days. This was like Thursday when he threw it out. He was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I was like, "Sure." He's like, "Okay, Monday." I'm like, "Wait a minute." But we do that. But when we're writing it, we're not thinking to ourselves like, we'll do this, and then this is incomplete enough that they'll need to buy the course. There was no course at that point. It was, if I have 10 days, how can I share as much actionable knowledge without getting in the weeds, but how could I give somebody enough that they could get a result, shift their understanding, knowing that if we do that later, there will be some consequence that we can't even predict. And it happened. We had people posting in the comments, or people would send us an email and say, I just bought the traffic engine because I went through your free training and I, added $50,000 to, my business from just these 3 or 4 things. So after that, I wanted to buy the course. And it was like, excellent, because that's what it was for. You really should. And we turn away. It's shocking how many people will come in and will be ready. You can tell they're ready to buy. And it's like, no, you go do the free thing first. And if you mean it, it works. If someone looks at this as a tactic, it'll fail. But when you mean it, and it's just an expression of how you're working, it works because people sense that it's genuine. And that's really the reason. My biggest fear with working with Andre before we worked together is I knew Andre by reputation. Of course, we all do. I knew him as a customer, and there was a certain persona. I thought, okay, if he's really like that, I really like this guy. But I've worked with far too many people over the years, names that I'm sure your audience knows, where the person behind the scenes isn't the person who's the person on the stage, and the person behind the scenes, not the same person. And that was a huge fear. And it was the greatest thing in the world. Like, the biggest relief was when we started to actually work on a project together. And I realized, okay, this guy is exactly who I thought he was from his public persona. And when later, to deconstruct the wisdom of that, it was like, well, of course, it's so much easier if we both just show up as ourselves. If you like what we're doing, you're never going to have a bad surprise, because there's no thing that's different later, right? You don't come to we don't have a mastermind, but you don't come to the mega mastermind and find out, oh, they're jerks. It's like, if you like what we're doing public facing, you're going to like what we're doing behind in the courses and other things, because it's the same.
I love that. Everything starts with a question, it seems like. And then, Andre, the challenge of like, hey, like, let's go do this 10-day thing next week. Let's go. And it seems like it just creates enough excitement. Obviously, new ideas are given to your audience. And you never know what's going to come up, but obviously you're going to get feedback. So it's probably going to turn into some type of way that you can continue giving the right kind of value. Is that?
Yeah, totally.
What's the process look like there? Yeah.
Well, sometimes we have to trick ourselves to actually do work like that, because we love to collaborate on ideas, and then we love to see what comes as a result of that. So, and deadlines work. So we have to create these self-imposed deadlines sometimes, and then we surprise our audiences with, hey, we've created this thing for you because we thought it was a cool idea. But that process was just because Shawn and I were writing different courses. The only rules was, each day we need to create this body of, this lesson over a 10-part series, and every single day Shawn needs to give me his lesson, I'll take my lesson and publish it live. So there was that, we were publishing it live, emailing our audience to say, there's the next one. So we had to show up and we had to do the work, even if it wasn't perfect, or if it wasn't quite, as it would be if we could spend an extra week on a lesson. So yeah, we just did that, and it turned out all right. And that's our collaboration when we're working on stuff jointly is slightly different. One of us will we'll both have ideas. So we'll jump on a call, just riff about ideas, create some broad structure, and then one of us will take the lead and write that first thing, the first expression of what we think this thing can turn into, or this lesson, and then they'll email. So Shawn will stick it into Ulysses, of which I can see. And then when I wake up in the morning, I'll see what he's written, and then I'll jump in and, add my contribution to that, or vice versa. And that just seems to be the process that works really well for us, because at the end of a week, or however long it takes for this back and forth to happen for a certain body of work, it's just that end thing that we end up with. We could never have predicted that. That's what we're going to generate, and it's difficult to unpack that really without actually doing it, and just experiencing what that's like. Because I've worked since 2003 up until when Shawn and I started working together, which was a year ago. I was always working solo, so there was no collaboration. That was me. So it's easy to procrastinate, and it's easy to just create a certain idea and then create an expression of that, put it out there. But there's a piece missing, which we didn't realize until we started to work together. And so we feel that the work that we're creating now is just so much better.
How do you guys decide like what sort of rabbit hole, what sort of topic you want to start to dive down next? Because I'm on your list, and you guys talk about a lot of different topics. One of my favorite topics that you guys talk about from time to time is the knowledge management topic. The whole smart notes and stuff like that. And there's some varying topics that you'll discuss out to your list. So I'm curious, how do you pick which rabbit hole you want to go down next?
That's a good question. How do we do that? We had something that happened recently that's probably a good example of it. So there's, again, it's emergent. I want to keep using the same word, but we had a Black Friday promotion for a course that for some reason, I don't know how this happened, but I heard something earlier. I thought we were approaching it entirely differently than Andre did. So I was coming in, and there was sort of this weird friction in there because I was like I thought we were coming at it from a certain so the perspective in the original course that Andre had created was based on if he only had $1,000 left in the bank and had to start over with no list, no anything, what would he do? And then we were going to do an update to that course, and I thought we were taking that same perspective, and he was way farther along than that. He wanted it to be something way better and different. So when the conversation happened, there was no, there wasn't something that we came into the conversation saying we're going to do this, but at some point in the conversation, I don't know which one of us blurted out that, well, what people really want to do is to be able to make $100,000. Like that just got blurted out. Mm-hmm. And then there's that pause where you're like, well, wait a second. What if this was how to go from $0 to $100,000? Now, and then we could feel it. We're like, oh, that's actually it. That's what people want to be able to go from. They have a job to they have this idea and they have enough money to have the lights on, pay the mortgage, put some food in their mouth, and let's just arbitrarily call that $100,000. Like, okay, neither one of us came into that conversation thinking about that, and then it was just over and over, all these kinds of things happened. We were coming at it from how we would do that. And Andre's a visual thinker, and he had put it in my note, and it was circular. And as I was looking at it, I was like, son of a bitch, that's a flywheel. And I'm like, each step leads to the next. And then so much emerged from that. It was all there, but it wasn't named. And that seems to be, that's a lot of what we do, is that because we both consume a tremendous amount of information and we're interested in stuff. We're always curious about stuff. So it gets back to improv again. Someone will say, hey, did you hear such and such podcast? I'm like, oh yeah, I like the part about X. Yeah, that reminded me of this. Oh, that's really interesting. What if we took that and applied it to and the next thing you know, we've got a 10,000 email series or 10,000 word email series because we just unpacked that idea because it was fascinating. Like, this is really fascinating. Let's run with it. That's the truth of how it happened. We should come up with something that describes it way more elegantly. And that's funny. That's something that we do, I think, is different. I was thinking about prior to this call, what are some real differences? But this is a subtle difference. Most people, I don't know, pick up on this, including people who teach, which is the difference between descriptive and prescriptive. Most courses are prescriptive, like, hey, do this, do it in this order, like whatever. And then you go see how the people actually do their work, and it looks nothing like that at all. So we try to balance descriptive, like this is what we actually do, this is what it looks like, with prescriptive, which is knowing this is what we do. If we have a little distance and perspective, we would probably make it look a little better and it would look more like this. But the combination of those two things, some people just like to know what you do and they want to do that. And others want you to, like, I don't care what you do, just tell me what I should do. Different. So I think we find something between those two things that makes sense for us, and just damn, we're curious about stuff.
Yeah, we're kind of lucky that our audience is attracted to the things that light us both up. So, and it's also because we get to pick who we want as customers, based on how we show up in the world. Well, both of us show up in a certain way, and it's very specific, and we have a certain worldview, and all of that is on the website. I mean, there's no secrets. So that's either going to pull people in or it's going to send them away. So we get to talk about PKMs and personal knowledge management because it's something that that matters to us, and it's what we use to take all of our crazy ideas and put them in a place that makes it easier to make sense of. So then, we just talk about that, and then some people like it, and that's great.
I think it's really cool because I feel like that what you described, Shawn, is what Matt and I do all the time. It's like, oh, I just learned this new thing or this concept, and it's like, what if we did this? It's like you kind of just take it a little step further, and our content comes out in the form of a podcast like this. So we get a lot of input from guys like you, and then we always have this banter section at the end of it. That's like another 20 minutes of matches, pretty much doing what you just said.
We literally figure out what our business is through the course of podcasting. We do a once a month episode called Therapy Session where we don't have guests. It's just me and Joe talking. And like most of our business ideas actually come out in like while we're chatting live on the podcast. Yeah. So,
and it takes people along with our journey, along with the guests that we have. And it's similar to what you guys have, is you're always relating these concepts or other people and, courses you might have, solutions. So it's really cool how it's all tied together, and it's this journey that we're taking folks on. And I'm kind of curious about like the storytelling side of things. I know Matt, you wanted to get through that, and you guys are both writers. Is there a different way that you guys approach how you tie all this together as a story and a journey, or are you guys following along pretty much the same concepts together?
This. I can't wait to hear your answer to this one. This is a fascinating question. This is how we learn about each other as we do podcasts. Really? That's what's been going on?
Well, I mean, both of us love to write, and writing is our primary means of communicating with the world and our audience, and specifically me, because I feel very uncomfortable doing video and audio. Shawn's more comfortable with that. So it's just, I had set up my stall early on that I'm only going to use email and the written word. So yeah, I think it's a lot easier to write an email that's kind of like a story, just telling a story to somebody else that happens to be an audience of thousands of people. So I think that's how the whole idea started, and it just kind of evolved from that. It wasn't anything, like premeditated. So because story matters and it's so important to the work we do, both of us have story coaches now, so we can at least understand what we're doing at a more granular level, because it's really easy to just do something but not quite know why you do a certain thing. It's just, and if somebody asks you, it's like, shit, I don't know, I just do it. So there was a lot of that in the beginning. There's no particular framework that we follow to create stories, because all we're doing is we talking about the business stuff and the marketing stuff that we do. So I don't know if you have any specific questions that we can maybe unpack.
Here's some a little more context for you guys. So when we were preparing for this interview today, we went and read your end of 2020 email, right? You guys sent an email right at the very end of 2020. We read that email, and then we proceeded to click into every single link in that email and then read like every article in all the email series. And it's just so damn engaging, right? Like we got
mind map followed later.
Yeah. We just got like sucked into all of the emails and the various stories you guys were telling. And I think we're kind of curious to try to dissect that a little bit more. Like what makes the stuff that you guys put out so engaging? Where the emails I get from you, when I get them, they're one of my like non-negotiables. I'm going to open this email. Like, don't even read the subject line. When I see the from line, I open those emails, right? So I'm curious, what do you guys think is different about that than almost like everybody else who's doing email?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. You go first. Yeah. I got a couple of things. I'll think about it.
Okay. Shawn can do the good stuff. I was just going to say that.
No pressure. Thanks, Andre.
It's probably less sexy than you think or than you want to believe. So many times it's just Shawn and I just want to share stuff. And it's expressed in a certain way that when you deconstruct it later on, it's something that we don't do. So we're approaching it from a different angle, and we're not trying to figure out what is this thing that we want to create other than, at the end of 2020, it's, let's share links to all the most valuable stuff. That was more specific. But even then, it's like, we weren't quite sure what was going to, come from that. We were just going to share all the things and point to different places. And when you do that, and and we do that every single day, and we're putting stuff onto the website, but we don't always tell people where something is, and we don't necessarily put it into the menu system so it's easy to find. We like to make certain pieces of information not hard to find, but when people find it, they have an experience. So we purposefully create these rabbit holes that email basically pointed to different places that people can find stuff. But you can't go to the website and see like a nice big list of things to read. So that probably didn't answer your question specifically. So hopefully Shawn's going to have something.
Like I said, no pressure. Thanks. I think there are three ways I'd answer that question. First, Michael Pollan, the author Michael Pollan, did an interview with Tim Ferriss, and he talked about when he writes books, he doesn't try to write a book from the perspective of, I'm an authority on X and let me tell you, the reader, what you need to know. What he does instead is he goes on a journey that interests him and then tells his audience about the journey. It sounds like it's very similar, but it's not at all. So a lot of what we're doing is what Michael Pollan is doing, which is we're on a journey, and then we are stopping at certain inflection points, like end of the year or whatever, and saying, okay, like what has happened lately that's been interesting? And then that pairs with the second question, which is we use all the time, which is really trying to understand. It's the who cares question, and so often we'll have an idea or I'll be working on a draft of an email, and there'll be some friction. It's not quite there. It feels like a knife fight. and I'll ask myself, I'm like, who cares? And then and it's a weird dialogue with myself where I'll answer that question and I'll ask it again. Well, who cares about that? And you smash up against that question. And finally, I'm like pissed, which is it's hysterical because I'm pissed at myself, but I'm like pissed and I blurt something out or write it with a pencil or something like, and I'll write something like almost in anger, like it's because, and then I write a sentence and I'm like, that's the thing that I've been looking for. And then I just go back to the beginning, or we go back to the beginning, and we start there because we've figured out that second most important thing, which is, why is this important or valuable to our audience? Like with crystal clarity, like what is the value that we can create here? That's so important. And I think the third thing we do, which is my favorite, and I almost don't want to say this publicly, but I'm going to do it.
It's a secret.
Because this is a secret.
We'll cut this part, right?
We'll edit
this out.
Okay.
We often will, when we are explaining something, we're doing the thing that we're explaining as we do it. And some percentage of people get it. And it's the craziest aha moment. Like we did an email, I can't remember when it was. I think it was the fall enrollment, but it was an email about storytelling. And the whole email is about how you can find ideas to create stories with examples of them. But the email it's 10 examples of us doing the thing that we're talking about. So when you're reading it, you're getting the experience of reading it and learning it, but it's actually happening to you at the same time. And at some point, someone gets that, and it's not a like, oh, that's interesting. It's an oh shit moment where someone gets that realization, they push back and they're like, wait a minute. They're like, I just experienced it. There are a couple of, if you want to reverse engineer, if you want to have your audience actually reverse engineer what it feels viscerally, there are two ways they can do it that are really good. One is it's a TED video. I don't remember the name of it, but the guy, it's like 7 minutes or 6 minutes, but the guy is an illustrator, and the video is about finding the face of Leonardo da Vinci. So that is a perfect example of how to reverse engineer an aha moment, because what he does is he goes through and says, okay, we don't have any known paintings of Leonardo da Vinci. So how would we find them? And then he says, well, or self-portraits, right? So he said, here are all the portraits. And then he says, first thing we can do is remove the women. And then you do it. But he goes through this process. And then at the end, he comes down to, and he points to, and they've winnowed it down to 3. They look at the chronological order, and he points to the screen and he says, I give you the master himself, Leonardo da Vinci. And you're like, oh, you can feel it in your gut. You're like, oh my, like it all came together. And another one which others I don't want to give away the punchline, but there's a Graham Norton interview with, it's like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, Graham Norton and Kevin Costner. And Kevin Costner tells the story about one of his friends who was a writer. And when the punchline of that happens, you'll stand up. And if you appreciate writing, if you appreciate a good story, you'll come right out of your chair, because it's that. And that's what we're trying to often engineer, is when someone has a moment where they just go, shit, like that, like it grabs them. We obviously don't do that every time. But that's what we're aiming for. And because we're always aiming for that, even when we miss, we tend to miss pretty big though. And we're like, we didn't quite get there, but we still, we got a triple. We didn't knock it out of the park, but we're on third base.
So are there scenarios where you're like mid email sequence, but you don't even know how the email sequence is going to end yet? You're kind of still in the middle of it, or do the emails
every single time?
Don't tell everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I love this story about someone commented for the traffic engine. Actually, it was really interesting. Somebody commented for the original version of the traffic engine, the original launch, and said, like, just kind of deconstructed, like, it's so amazing what you've been doing. I'm ready to buy and all this. And she was trying to figure out, and she had thought she had figured out like what we had done. And sometimes I remember, Andre, you got a video from somebody, or an email with like this long video explaining to us what they thought we had done to create this experience. And it's also, I always feel kind of bad going back to them being like, we just wrote it organically one day ahead. Like all
the magic just dispersed.
Yeah. It's like everything that you thought, but we come in with a theme. We come in with some guiding principles that it needs to be independently valuable. Like if somebody goes through the emails and never buys a single thing, that we're leaving them far better off than we found them in exchange for their attention, and attention is precious. So we treat their attention as being precious, and it's an honor. We don't just say it's an honor to have had your attention. We mean it. Like we know we have thousands of people reading this, and that's collectively, that's incredible. So we treat it with such profound respect that we make our decisions around that, and not to persuade. I mean, we do crazy stuff. We give stuff away on the last day of our enrollments to prevent people from buying who shouldn't. Like we do insane stuff. But it's all in service to that larger idea that we're optimizing for happy customers. And happy customers, you don't have to be a happy customer tomorrow. That's good. You can come buy something 2 years from now, but between now and then, you're in the tribe. We're going to treat you like we're going to treat our best friends, genuinely. And if you buy something later, great. If you don't, I hope we left you better off than when you came in. And that's who we are. That's who we want to be professionally.
Yeah, there's two breeds of writers. I don't know if you've heard of the term pantser. So you get plotters and pantsers. Plotters are somebody like Liz Gilbert, J.K. Rowling, where they'll map out the entire book or the entire series like in huge amount of detail. So they know exactly what's going to happen next, and then all they need to do at some point is then just write it. Then there's people like Stephen King and Don Winslow, and there's many world-class authors, and it's like, I don't know. It's just all I need is one sentence or one idea, and then they'll just start to write, and that story emerges for them just like it does for a reader that's reading the book. It's almost the same. So Shawn and I find that we can plan certain things loosely, but we can't go very, very detailed. Like we can't go down to the little tiny bits and pieces. That's just not how we're wired. So we found that if we throw ourselves into these weird places where we just have to show up and write and just create something. And what comes out of that in that moment, each time that we then publish it, is just, it's new. It's something that we hadn't necessarily planned for, other than having a certain idea. And, those ideas for us many times come from morning pages. Shawn's been journaling morning pages for many years, and I've done so more recently. But many times I'll take photos of my morning pages and stick it at the base camp just to share insights I've had. And then Shawn will just buzz me on WhatsApp. Oh, excuse me, that's my printer kicking into action. He'll buzz me on a WhatsApp about like some crazy idea that he had on page 3 of his morning pages. And then we'll just run with these ideas, and later, sometimes they turn into emails, or turn into courses, or turn into elements of a course. Can't always plan for it.
Yeah. Now, this is fascinating, because it seems like just like the way you guys collaborate normally, is you start with something simple, a concept, and it gets complex, and then it gets simple. And it seems like that's maybe the writing process as well. You start with a simple concept, and internally, maybe it's a little bit more complex because you're working it out. You're passing it through filters like, who cares? Why am I even, why do they even want to read this? Where is it going to go? And then you simplify it through the writing. And then it seems like it's this, I guess, flywheel, because I know you're all about the flywheels too. It's like, it's got this momentum that carries itself through, because you kind of have that traction with the writing and connection to the reader at the same time, in real time.
And I think there's another, I'm trying to, as we're having this conversation, I'm trying to make sure we don't leave anything out, because it's always hard when you listen to somebody, and if you engage with the material and they gave you 90% of it, and you're like, what was the other thing? And I think something we may have inadvertently let out, and this is just from my perspective, Andre's perspective on this may be totally different, but our writing starts, like for me, when I'm writing the first thing, I'm writing for the person whose opinion matters most to me. So that's a factor in this. So if I sit down, and just because of the nature of timing, Andre's 6 hours ahead. So often just the way timing will work is I need to have something for him to read in his morning, where he has a much longer period of time, so that we're not delayed. So I'm writing the first draft of something, even though it's a first draft and all of that, I'm still writing for the first person who's going to read it is the audience is most important to me, which that has a very important effect. It's not just like, hey, let's get our ideas on paper. It's like, well, I'm getting my ideas on paper, and we've had a conversation or whatever. We have a theme, but I'm putting my ideas on paper for my thought partner, co-conspirator, but really for the person. I'm writing for Andre first, and saying, here's where I'm thinking. And we use lots of abbreviations, like one of our abbreviations is TOL, thinking out loud. So it might, there might be like some part in there, like I'm just TOL on this one. I'm not sure about this. And then he knows what that shorthand is, which is like, okay, this isn't fully refined. Or if it doesn't say TOL, then he knows, like, this is me bringing, this is my best. We have other parts of the collaboration that are interesting too, which is another abbreviation, which is NPO, which means no pride of ownership, where it's I've written what I can, I'm handing it to you. I know it will be better when it comes back, but anything that you see in it, anything, run with, go anywhere you want with it. And sometimes that means we pull whole stuff out. Sometimes we start over. But it's not. There's no ego, which is really weird, because we have two people who care so much about the craft of writing, yet when we write together, there is a complete lack of ego. No one protects his stuff. It's weird. I don't know that I would even believe it if someone described it to me. I'd be like, yeah, it's bullshit. That's not how it actually works. Totally how it works. It's just two guys really writing for each other first. Andre's going to come on and be like, I can't stand that guy. I never, like, I never write for that jerk. But from my perspective, that's, I have an audience of one for my first draft. I'm like, can I explain my best thinking to my co-conspirator here, and what's going to happen as a result? Or if I read the second version, like, same idea, like, he's created something. What can I bring my absolute best to it to make make it a little bit better, to contribute to make something. And what's weird is when we go back and look at emails, I have no idea who wrote what. It's like,
That's cool.
Like, we wrote this. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah,
we should skip Andre's answer in case he contradicts me. I can't stand that guy.
Well, it's but we're actually doing this week. So Friday, we've decided that we're doing a newsletter. We aren't sure what's going to be in the newsletter yet. So it's the end of Monday for me. It's it's Shawn's morning or afternoon now. So we've only got a few days left to come up with the idea, then write the email and get it ready for Friday, which is when we're going to hit the send button. So that's the only thing that we know right now. At the same time as we also have a third part of a lesson for a course that we busy doing live. And we've told everybody last week that they're getting this lesson on Friday as well. So we've got these two things that are going to happen together between now and Friday. Whereas the newsletter part, we've got no idea what's going to go in there yet. And the course is, well, we know what's going to go in there, but it still needs to be written. So that's what we do, is we just make life difficult for ourselves.
Well, you're creating deadlines. I think that is, because that's what Matt and I too is like, if there's not a deadline, if we're not sprinting, like creating these little micro sprints for each other, then our best work doesn't come out. It's kind of like our podcast as well. Like we contain our time. We usually record multiple in a day. Today it's just you guys, but either way, we kind of, and we want to prepare just enough to, for ourselves and our audience, but really it's us as well. And I feel like just with enough preparation, enough, we have a deadline, we know when we're going to talk, we know when it's just good enough to get the momentum started. And it seems like the writing process is very similar. Mm-hmm. And, it's like this ping ponging of ideas. I think that's super, super powerful with partners too, is not having that ego. Probably the hardest part on the outside when you're not doing it, but when you're collaborating with the right person, it just kind of flows.
I think it's worth drawing attention to the fact that not everybody thinks in this way. Some people do and some people don't, but it's okay, because there's no right or wrong way to do this. I mean, certain people need to plan. They love spreadsheets, they love structure, and that's okay. For them, they should plot out everything, plan everything, and then just go with it. And then what emerges as a result of that is going to be better for them. For us, we just, this is the way that works for us, where it's a bit more improv-y, but we have the ideas already. We just need to mix them in a way that's going to resonate with our audience and ourselves.
Yeah, I've got one last question, then we can go ahead and wrap up. I'm curious, how much are you doing with email automation and segmentation these days? Because I'll tell a super quick story. So one of the first times I sort of got introduced to Andre was when we were promoting something for Brian Moran. It was like a Facebook ad course or something like that. I actually don't even remember what it was at this point. But me and my partner at the time, Bradley Will, we were number 2 on the leaderboard, and number 1 on the leaderboard was Andre. And when we met with Brian Moran in person and asked him about the promotion, I think he said Andre sold about 3 times as much as we did, and we were in second place, right? And so when I finally met Andre, I was like, yeah, we were emailing to, I think, 100,000 people. How many were you emailing to? And I think I don't remember the exact number, but it was a few thousand. And when we asked you how you were doing, it was all about the segmentation. And we're like, man, this guy, he generated 3 times as many sales off of 2,000 emails, and we mailed to 100,000 people. And really the trick behind it was you were just sending it to only the people that showed some interest. How much of that are you still doing in your business? How much of is segmentation, and how much is just, here are our ideas and let's just put it out to everybody?
It's definitely part of our what we do. It's really important for us that we only share with people that are that want to hear a certain thing. So although broadly speaking, our audience is into marketing, which is why they're here in the first place, that doesn't mean that they're going to be interested in every single thing that we have to say. So we always make it a point of respecting their attention. And stuff happens, and stuff, people lose jobs, or weird things happen. And even if somebody would be interested in that moment in time, then maybe they're not. So instead of just presuming that everyone's going to always be interested and then just emailing everybody, it's important for us to do that segmentation. So I think like the quick version is we would write a single email. The more complex version is we'll write a series of emails that unpack a certain idea about something that's going to happen. And then it's always, if you want to hear about this thing, raise your hand by clicking the link. So it's really simple automation. There's nothing complex about it other than it being, that we're intentional about asking them first, having them raise their hand. Most people say no. So, their behavior is they don't click the link. Mm-hmm. But then there's a segment of people that do, and then everything else happens only to those people. And then after the fact, we'll then take all these emails and all this stuff because it's so valuable, and we will put it on the website somewhere for people to find. So nothing's ever wasted. We love recycling work that we've created. So nothing's ever done in isolation just for one moment in time. So yeah, that's the simple version. But yeah, you can get pretty complex with the automation.
I think the automation reflects the intent is what really is incredibly important. So we had a fall promotion, fall enrollment for 3 courses, and if a lot of people would say like, well, just let all of your customers know, right? Everybody gets to go through it. But instead of doing that, and this is a reasonably typical example, but we'll often do, like we did a Friday email and said, hey, this thing's going to happen next week. We're going to talk about this idea we have called the durable business, what makes a business long lasting. And we sort of defined it. And so we're going to do a 5-part series next week. There is nothing to buy in that 5-part series. It's all value. You can ignore it. We're sort of telling them what's coming, but it's all value. And by the way, at the end of that series, we're going to then do another 5 parts. And those 5 parts are going to connect the dots with the courses that we offer, which are going to be open for enrollment in these particular days. If you do nothing, you won't get the extra 5 emails. You won't know anything about the enrollment. You don't have to, we're going to give value, and only if you raise your hand are we going to cross that threshold into to connecting the value to our courses. So in week 1, if you read all 5 of those emails, there is no reference to our courses. You can't buy anything. It's just a complete series on 5 elements of a durable business, sort of defining what it is and how those parts work together and why that's important. You could print it out and be better off with that. But if you want to know more, if you want to go deeper about how we specifically think about those components, that's going to be timed with when we're going to be actually talking about our courses and we're going to be opening enrollment. So you have to raise your hand, and sometimes we make it really hard, but it's not a like, hey, don't do anything and you'll get those emails. It's like, no. You have to do things. You have to raise your hand. And once in a while, people will reach out and say, I totally, I didn't get to your emails fast enough and I missed that promotion. Can I get them now? Can you send me those? Fine. Mm-hmm. But it's counterintuitive, because if you look at the numbers of your entire list, and think, okay, I'm going to cut this down by 90%, and only send promotional stuff to 10% at a time. That can't work. And what ends up happening is you're respecting the attention of everybody so often that 10% or 15, whatever it is, who raise their hand are so much more engaged because they've said, yeah, this is right for me right now. It's so counterintuitive and so impactful. I don't see anybody else doing it. So
no, really, it's true. And then that's what I was going to say is like everyone's got the megaphone right now and has had for a long time, just yelling at everyone. And that's where we've been kind of slapped around by a couple email folks on this show too, prior to you guys coming over, like, oh yeah, segmentation. That's like number one thing, is speak to the right person at the right time.
Well, I think about like what's being said. It's like, okay, yelling loudly isn't working well anymore, so let's yell louder.
Right.
Wait a second. Like when you say it out loud, you're like, well, wait a minute, that almost doesn't make sense. So it's like, okay, well, everybody's yelling loudly now. So if you want to stand out, if you're in a room and 10 people are yelling, how do you stand out? You're the person in the corner who's being quiet. automatically people see what's different in situations. We're pattern recognizing creatures. And if everybody is yelling for our attention, eventually that's overwhelming. But what you will notice is the one person who's not yelling. So now what will happen is everybody will start doing a great job at this, and we'll have to be the guys. That's it.
So you're saying that adding more emojis to the subject line isn't the answer?
Well, I think it is. I just think it might be the wrong question, but it is certainly the right answer.
Wrong kind of contrast we're looking for here.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, it's you have to get the right emojis, I guess, is really the question. I'm just trying to imagine a situation where we send it. Actually, Andre uses emojis, so maybe I don't even know. Maybe we send emojis in emails. I don't know. Two things I've never done in my entire life. I've never used an emoji, and I've never taken a selfie. So the emoji thing, I just laugh at all the time when I hear
That's actually pretty impressive.
That is very impressive.
Yeah, at this point, it's like a badge of honor. I would never use an emoji.
You can't.
Occasionally, I accidentally click the thing, and I'm nervous. I'm like, oh God. And no,
don't hit send. And it's official. Right. It's in the universe. Yeah.
That's right. It's out there.
Yeah, I've been tempted to add an emoji to some of the emails that Shawn writes, because I then publish it.
Emoji by proxy.
Yeah.
Ruin your reputation.
Yeah,
well, let's wrap it up. We already went over time, and I apologize for that. And Andre, thanks for being on here and doing the video thing too, because I know it's not your jam. So big props, brother.
You're welcome. And it looks like with all this weird lighting that's happening now because it's dark outside.
It actually looks really cool.
I've been nerding out on the lighting the whole time because I just set up all these LED lights that are like timed up in my house. I'm like, I think his is changing to the time. Maybe not. I don't know. I could be. But
it's just a reflection of his lava lamp that you can't see.
Oh, how cool.
His beanbag chair and his lava lamp chair.
He's bringing it back. Well, how do folks dive in? Obviously, you send so much gold out there, and they can kind of go back in the archives and all that. But how can folks start this adventure with you guys?
Yeah, everything we do is published to tinylbusinesses.com. That's the plural version. And at the moment, all the courses are closed, so there's nothing to buy, but there's tons of stuff to read.
That's perfect.
And there's somewhere, I don't know, it's probably a couple 100,000 words of free content on there. So just go poke around. If you're interested in traffic, there's stuff on traffic. If you're interested in lead gen, there's stuff on lead gen, stuff about conversion, writing great emails. But just go play in the sandbox for a little while we figure out how to sell some stuff later.
It's a freeing feeling though, knowing like, hey, there's so much stuff out there, and there's nothing for sale at the end of this, and only if you choose to be. Maybe sometime. So yeah, definitely. We'll link everything up in the show.
The right people will come. Yeah. The right people will come back, and we'll find that whenever weeks, months, years from now, that thing that they heard, they're ready for it. We're not going anywhere. So when the customer's ready, we're going to be here doing our thing.
Nice.
As crazy as it looks.
I love it. That's how it's done. All right, guys. Appreciate your time. It has been an honor. And we definitely, we do. Thank you.
It's been fun.
All right, Joe, I have a question for you.
What is it?
Would you rather,
oh God,
wear adult diapers the rest of your life or never wear underwear again? Well, that's easy.
Definitely no underwear.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, come on. Come on.
Although adult diapers would be nice during podcast days.
I was going to say, I'm like, I probably should have used the restroom before we hit record again, but nah. I'm just going to keep drinking my coffee and pounding my water.
I don't know how many times we're in the middle of a podcast and I'm like from the waist down dancing.
Well, dude, I was dancing when I came into your house today, though. That was different kind of dancing, though. I was freezing cold.
Yeah.
Riding my bike to your house.
That's true. You were like, feel my hands, feel my face. I'm freezing. I'm dying over here.
I was blue. And it is in San Diego. I know I'm a wimp, but didn't have any layers on. And bikes are fast in the cold.
So some context around would you rather. We got these things called pod decks, who they're not a sponsor.
They're not.
But I have been chatting with the founder of this company on Instagram and in Clubhouse lately. And I thought this would be kind of a cool concept to every once in a while throw into like our outros. Or, with wherever. Some of our interview guests, but also on Clubhouse, right? Like start a Clubhouse room and be like, hey, we're playing Would You Rather, and just like start randomly pulling cards and letting people in the audience like answer the questions and just have some fun on Clubhouse.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read another one.
All right, you want to do it? Because the original idea for this was I was going to read one at the beginning. Then we were going to sort of riff on our awesome episode with Andre and Shawn.
You know what? I'm gonna save.
And then save that one for the end.
I have one in my hand. I have not read it yet, so I'm going to wait. So yeah, wait for a little bit longer. We're going to do another Would You Rather, and maybe think of what would you do?
Yeah.
What would you do?
What would you do between adult diapers or no underwear at all? See, the thing is, like,
I love it.
I'm pretty, like, if the option was only wear adult diapers or no underwear at all the time, that'd be awesome. Because on podcast days, I'd wear adult diapers and I'd just be like halfway through an interview and I'd be like, "Hey, Joe,
no, look what I got."
And I'll just stare at you in the eyes, stare at you in the eyes right in the middle of it, right in the middle of the podcast. Like, and be like, "All right, I'm good. I'm done."
Just do it in the middle of an interview. And you're like, look at that glimmer in Matt's eye. It was 36 minutes into the conference. Oh, that's the moment. That's when it happened.
Yeah. When we finally get Dan Ryan on the podcast, I'll wear adult diapers for that one so I can stare him in the eyes while I take a leak.
Well, Dan's always asking for his name to be called because we have to pay our royalty as well. There you go, Dan.
Yeah. Well, and this time it's
royalty here.
Yeah. Dan, you got your shout out and it's in the context of adult diapers. Congratulations.
Go you. You're doing life good.
So Andre and Shawn.
All right. Yeah.
Let me grab my clipboard over here.
Yeah, you do that. Make it official. All right. Andre and Shawn. Matt and I were, so we've been following Andre for a long time, but it was leading up to this episode, this interview. Matt and I were both like, dude.
Yeah.
This is going to be fun. And I've been really excited and I went way deeper down the rabbit hole than normal, like prior to this episode. And because Shawn was someone that we didn't really know much, really anything about too much other than reading some emails and stuff like that. But dude, the blend of them and their thinking and their skills of writing and the lack of ego when it comes to content creation, but the fact that they can just ping pong ideas and actually present them to the world in this way is fascinating. And they know marketing like so much deeper than most ever probably will experience. And they're trying to share that. I think we got a little smidgen out in this episode, huh?
Yeah. No, I feel like this is another one. I feel like I'm saying this a lot lately, but I feel like this is another one where we could have gone 2 hours with them because
we're doing our jobs.
We had so much we wanted to talk about. I actually had more notes of things that we didn't get to talk about. I even asked him more questions after we stopped hitting record and went, damn it, we should have got that on recording.
I didn't even look at my notes. Yeah. I just wrote stuff down.
Yeah, but I mean, I went a little ways back with Andre. I met him in Baltimore after so I kind of told a real quick story about how he kicked our asses on a leaderboard several years back. Well, because I was in the top 5 on that leaderboard with my partner Bradley at the time, we got invited to a mastermind in Baltimore, and they covered a lot of the expenses for us to be out there at that mastermind. And since Andre was number 1, he was at the mastermind too. And so I got to spend, a weekend, like a 2 or 3 day weekend hanging out with Andre and Brian and a big group of people that were all there. And then Andre and I have sort of loosely stayed in touch via email ever since then. But Shawn, I didn't know the story of how Shawn got involved or why Shawn got involved or, what Shawn brought to the table while working with Andre. So that was all sort of new information to me. And I found it really interesting. Shawn was a customer and Andre and Shawn really hit it off. And I think my impression is that he likes working with other people and having some sort of collaborator, and it just seemed like a perfect fit.
Yeah. No, and there's I'm trying to find a note because something you just said is probably here we go. Yeah, it's an emergence. So they talked about emergent marketing, and everyone should definitely, if you're still with us in this episode, go to the show notes page, and we should have links to some of these emails that we read and their content, because most of their content's in email form, but they publish it also as blog posts. Sometimes they can condense all that stuff. Definitely go through how they define emergent marketing, even outside of what you just learned here, because part of that is just emergence as how they define it is when multiple parts of a system come together and create something that's different or better than the sum of the separate parts. I really think that's probably why Shawn and Andre are working together. Because it seems like Shawn has this, like the traffic side, the awareness, which is part of their thing. And with them blended and the way that
their relationship is the definition of emergent marketing.
Exactly. It's perfect. And I guess that's us too. We just have never defined those types of things, but like we've done separate stuff for so long, but we always kind of helped each other.
Yeah.
But now combined, we can, sit in the seats that we're really good at, but also combine forces. And yeah, it's just really cool.
Yeah. Well, so one takeaway and then one thing that I'm sort of envious, sort of jealous of. So a big takeaway for me from this one was when they were talking about how 80% of sales come after 90 days.
Yeah.
Like how many, especially in the digital marketing space, how many digital marketers are out there going from Facebook ad to lead magnet to asking for the sale, right? That's like most of us.
Yeah.
And like
80, 90% probably.
And if you're not doing that, you're probably going, there's a lot of that advice. Like you don't go for a home run on the first date, right? You try to get to first base first, right?
Let's be honest. It's if they're doing it or not, like they're probably just not sending emails.
But like a lot of people like to say, like you're asking to get married on the first date. When you first like get introduced to them, most people go for the sale, and then you have all of these marketers out there who are saying, yeah, you don't go for the sale on the first day they get introduced to you, and most of those marketers are going for the sale on day 2 or 3, right? Like they're going, don't go for the sale on the first day. They send 2 days of value, and then the third day is asking for the sale. It's, if you look at the data that they're talking about, 80% of sales come after 90 days.
Yeah.
So
that was what Dean Jackson saying that. So like Dean Jackson's seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of merit to what that stat is coming from.
Yeah. So, I mean, like it seems to make a lot of sense to put a lot of effort into giving as much value as you can in the beginning of the relationship. And we covered this a lot with George Bryant, and we covered this a bit with the email marketing guys, Robin Kennedy.
Yeah.
Right. But it makes a lot of sense that when somebody gets on your list for the first handful of days or even weeks and potentially even months, you're just providing value. And then when finally there's an offer that's ready to be made, you've created so much goodwill among your audience that offer is going to be infinitely more effective.
And there's a quote, and I just want to read this really fast, that was from one of their emails right on this point, is basically everyone talks about the money is in the list. And it's like, no, the money's not really in the list. Yeah, it's in there, but it's actually the money is in the authentic relationships you build with people on your email list.
Yeah.
That's it.
And here's a theme. So a theme that's popped up, right? We talked about this with Pat Flynn. We talked about this with Rand Fishkin. We talked about this today again with Andre and Shawn, is this theme of things that don't scale and building relationships with your audience at levels that aren't really that scalable, right? And I feel like there's sort of an underlying theme here with these guys in that same way, right? Especially in their sort of philosophy of when we do send emails, we're sort of drilling down to the ideal customers for these emails and then only sending them to those people.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that make the sales, right? You feel like you've got a real deep relationship with these guys because of all the segmentation they do, because of all of the really tailoring of their sequences that they do. And that sort of theme seems to keep on popping up over and over and over again of like building authentic relationships, but not trying to do it in a way where you're just trying to put thousands of people on your list all at the same time and then sell them something immediately. And then it, like most people seem to treat these email subscribers as almost like disposable, faceless sort of assets that they're collecting, right? Where in reality, every single person on your list is a human being who has emotions and who's struggling right now with something and who's excited right now about something. And by figuring out how to like narrow in on the people and do the things that don't scale and segment your list to tailor to the exact right people and tailoring your content and being authentic yourself, all of this seems to be kind of culminating along, from all of these past few episodes.
Yeah, I think it's a theme we're starting to experience. Like, I'm looking over your shoulder. Yeah, some old writing on a whiteboard, and it's kind of like what you're talking about. I wrote down connect, collaborate, and refine. This was like for one of the therapy sessions we did.
Yeah,
but like I really feel like that's what the theme is for this year, or at least for us so far. It seems that way. The 3 podcasts we recorded are all about building super fans and building solid relationships. It's segmenting. It's using data that people are giving you or that you can find so you can actually speak intelligently and connect with the right people at the right time and not get the megaphone out and blare that thing to level 11 and go, what up, buy my stuff? I'm like, no, hey, none of that going on. Like, I really feel like this year is build the tribe year. It's the time to connect, and you can do that in so many modalities. And I think we're starting to see those trends pop up through the podcast here, and it's probably us selecting those people because they're coming to us at the right time. Yeah. But I really feel like that's probably the most powerful thing anyone can do right now. I mean, you could have done it before too, but now more than ever, like their whole what the durable business is one of their products, and it's all about how to start a business right now. I mean, you can't buy it right now, actually, because it's not for sale.
No, but the free email sequence breaks it down pretty damn well already.
And you should go through it for sure, the durable business. And again, in the show notes, find some links. And but like with that, you can, within a year, the goal is to make $100,000 business out of what they're teaching you. And we talked about the 1,000 True Fans concept in the Pat Flynn episode, and how if you do that, really, you can just put a price tag on those names and say, okay, every month you're going to get paid roughly $100 per person or true fan you have. And if you have 1,000 of them, you have $100,000 business. I mean, apply that concept to here with the durable business and everything they put out there. It's just connecting with the right people and trusting in your systems and your messaging and the content you put out there that you're going to be fine. Like, you don't need to push, kind of all this pressure. It's like, talk to the right people and eventually they will buy. You don't need to pressure them into a bunch of upsells all from day one or second one. Yeah, it's like dating, and then like it's like worse than getting married. It's like, let's just do our whole life in this 10-minute experience of going through a sales funnel. You know what I mean? Like, like, let's just jump to like the furthest possible experience we can do. Like, that's not how we work.
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting. I'm thinking about this, and there's actually, when this episode comes out, I believe this is our fourth. No, I don't remember what episode this has been this year. But so another episode that came out before this one, but in 2021, is the Salome Shellac episode. I tried to say it too fast and then just screwed up my talking.
Yeah,
I don't talk so good sometimes.
Hey, that's usually my MO.
Yeah. But her episode, if you remember, we talked about Facebook ads, but it was specifically Facebook ads for engagement and audience and building fans, not Facebook ads for the purpose of getting leads and sales.
Very true.
So that one's right in the mix from this month and this year as well.
Let's lump it in. Yeah, I mean, she's in the mix here. So that's 4 of our latest episodes. At least we think they're the latest.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's not a trend here, I don't know what's like. Come on, it's not sending traffic to send traffic, which a lot of people are clicks. It's like, no, those are people.
Yeah.
Like Shawn was talking about it, and this is kind of a take. It's like a mini note is like he kept saying long form, and this is in the emails too. A long form Facebook ad. He's not doing these short, 2-sentence things and sending them to an opt-in page. Like that's not their MO, because that's again dating and then like probably going on multiple dates in one go.
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's just date, I guess, in this Facebook ad. And, if it resonates, then you're probably going to click into it. Most likely it's going to go to another piece of content that they have where you're not going to have to opt in.
Yeah.
You definitely are going to have the option, I would imagine. But that's, and it's just trusting that the right people are going to raise their hand. You don't have to bark at everyone and potentially piss a bunch of people off, or could have been the right person at the right time if you let them develop.
Yeah. Yeah, and so one more thing, I sort of opened a loop saying that there was one takeaway and one sort of like thing I was envious of, jealous of.
I remember, yeah.
So the thing that I'm sort of jealous of is, he was talking about the plotter and the pencer. I've never heard those terms before, but like, basically one person is the person who is going to plan it all out and have like an outline, and they're going to know what these emails are going to be for the next month or whatever. Or in the case of book writers, they have the whole storyline mapped out. And then the pencer, I guess, would be the opposite, where they're writing it and the story's unfolding for them as they're writing it. They don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, 100%, I tend to lean on that more plotter side. Every blog post I've ever written, I spend probably more time outlining it than I do actually writing the article. Right. So like I will sit there and analyze it and reorder the order of events in the article. I will go and collect stats to make sure I'm backing it up by data and add those to my outline. And I'll spend probably 5 hours on an outline. And when my outline's ready, the writing the article is easy. It'll take me an hour to just freaking hammer it out because I'm just following along to an outline. Mm-hmm. The thing that I'm jealous of is I kind of wish I was more that Pencer style where I could just like, all right, open my active campaign today. I'm going to send an email. Let's just see what flows out. But for whatever reason, my brain doesn't seem to operate that way. And that's the thing that I'm sort of like envious of. I know Andre said that that's how he is. I'm not sure if Shawn's the same way or not. Kind of sounds like they have some similarities and overlap there, but like, that's one thing that I wish I could be better at. Like I'm reading a lot of books on storytelling and writing and things like that right now.
Well,
because that is improv. Yeah, that's like a skill I'm trying to hone in on right now is just being able to not know where I'm going with something, start writing and let it just unfold the way it unfolds.
So yes, and but yeah, I mean, I think you are naturally more of a plotter. I'm naturally more of a pincer. And I mean, you got to think just in that and inherently, like we're creating a spectrum between ourselves, between the two of us. But yeah, I think it's funny you say you're kind of jealous that you're not more of the pincer type. I'm more jealous I'm jealous that I'm not more of the plotter type. Again, I don't think not again, but probably shouldn't be any jealousy.
Yeah.
It's cool to blend it and just know like there's a spectrum happening here. And I think it's there. I mean, your writing is absolutely phenomenal when you do it, but I think there's sometimes some hangups on the plotter side.
Yeah.
Just like on the pincer side.
It takes me a lot longer to get things out.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's why they said deadlines and, really going at real time pace helps them get it done. And I know for us, that's kind of the same way. If we combine forces, we get this interesting blend of plotter and pincer when we know there's a deadline and we have a general topic we start with. And then we go, it's kind of like our presentations, how we do those, which kind of leads me to it does lead me to a point really fast here on something that Shawn said, which I think we do. And sometimes we don't think about it in this process. And we talked a lot. It's this whole thing of like, they start with a concept that's kind of simple. And this goes for any kind of new sequence they're doing, like a 10-day sequence or whatever, course even, which that probably comes after the sequence and they got feedback, which is really cool. Because it's all in real time again. They're not like expecting what people are going to give them. They're just kind of but it's this simple concept. And then when they start thinking about it and exchanging ideas between the two of them, it gets more complex and they go really deep down the well. And I know you and I will have a conversation like we are here. Now we're just recording it, but like, shit, we already went 20 minutes almost. But it's like, we'll go deep on things and start asking questions and it gets super complicated. We'll like, the whiteboard will be filled up or you'll have some crazy flow chart that's just like messy. And, for a lot of times we would stay there in the complicated bit, we wouldn't realize, we can go to this, like, let's go back to simplifying now that we have this big thing. Let's start refining. Let's figure out the 80-20 or even 90-10, you know what I mean? And then when we present it anywhere, it can be more of a simple concept, but it's more principle based and it shows the connections. I know for a long time we've just kind of tossed a bunch of stuff out there, and in some of the presentations we've done in the past, just to wrap that back up, like sometimes we just give a lot of information, and it's complex. But I like the fact that they go simple, complex, but then let's actually simplify it for everyone, and also probably for them to really lock it in and distill.
Well, I was kind of laughing a little. I chuckled a little bit when you said the presentations because a lot of the times on the presentations, the role is reversed a little bit. You've built the presentation, you know exactly where it's going. And a lot of times, like, we'll get on the presentation and it'll be some of the first times I'm seeing some of the slides and I'm like,
it's true.
I'm kind of rolling with it and improving like while we're giving live presentations a lot of times.
I think that actually is kind of an issue. I think I talked about it last time we had this therapy session is I'll get in my head. And because I've plotted that whole thing out, like I would have shared it with you and you've given me feedback by that point. But typically I'm the one that comes up with the framework. Well, I mean, maybe you give me a flow in mind, but it's like a very simple flow, like no detail. And then so I have this in my head. I'm like, okay, I know what's coming up. I know what the flow. And like, and then you on the other hand, you're just like,
yeah, we just get on this. We just get into the presentation mode, and I just improv the whole thing. I'm like, where are we going with this? Well, see, I'll see the next slide. I'll be like, sometimes I'll be on the next slide. I'll be like, hey Joe, what did you mean by this one?
Well, you've done it. I think it was even at the War Room presentation or one of these pretty big ones. And I remember you were like, all right, so what are we talking about here in this one? And then, like, you're looking at the monitor that's like on the ground that no one can see. I was like, in my head, I'm kind of, and it doesn't matter. I'm just like, Matt, you should know these. I'm like, well, I made the slides. That's why I'm all freaking trying to be all rigid here. But I envy you in that.
Well, we know the content. I just don't always necessarily remember the order of the slides and the flow and stuff. But yeah.
No, yeah, I get it. But it is fascinating. We bounce roles back.
Yeah. Well, before this outro goes too long, we got some things to shout out, and we got one last Would You Rather to do.
So let's do some shout outs first.
Yeah.
And then we'll wrap it up with the Would You Rather.
Sweet.
All right. So last shout out, actually first shout of the last section here
Yeah.
is Easy Webinar. It's the Easy Webinar. We've talked about webinars a lot, and we've had some, we want to get some webinar folks coming back this year. Who's the last way? We had Jason Fladlian on last time talking about webinars.
We had Sam Bell come on and talk about webinars.
That's right. I really want to get Joel Irway back.
Joel Irway and Joe Lavery, somebody that we've been sort of circling around. I think we booked him once and it fell through, and we never managed to rebook him. But Joe Lavery would be a great one to talk webinars with as well.
Yeah, and the point being is like, I think a lot of folks just think of webinars and there's like one style of webinar, the long webinar that's value, build it up to a story arc, and then we're going to sell it some shit. It's like, well, it's not always that way. Like all those guys are teaching different types of webinars and different types, applications, timings, all that stuff. So Easy Webinar supports all that, which is really rad. As a software, it can do any of these types of webinar technology-wise. You just have to create the webinar still. But it gives you the framework and all the, the pages, the structure, all that stuff that you don't want to do to track everything, how effective. So it gives you all it's like your all-in-one toolkit for everything webinars. So, and it's easy.
Yep.
Hence the name.
So easywebinar.com/hustle. That's where you can get that. He's hooking up with a discount. The discount varies based on whether it's monthly or annual, but he's hooking you up because you're a Hustle and Flowchart listener. So go to easywebinar.com/hustle and, start using Easy Webinar. Start doing some webinar stuff.
Where that
second shout out.
Yes.
If you want the notes for this episode, which these notes are going to be good. Woo. I'm looking forward to reading back on these notes myself.
Yep.
Make sure you go to flowchartgroup.com. Now, if you go to flowchartgroup.com, that is a Facebook group. You will need to request to join the group. But when you request to join the group, one of the questions is give us your email and we'll send you the notes. So when you request to join the group, give us that email. We'll make sure you get the notes as long as you do it within 2 weeks of this episode going live. That's flowchartgroup.com. We want to hook you up, so go do it.
Go do it. And find us on Clubhouse and all that stuff if you're on there, and also on all the socials. Go find us, ping us, shout us out, friend us, whatever it is. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, we like doing the non-scalable conversations right now. For now. Eventually,
just
I'll be
now? We're not gonna.
Eventually, I'll be like
conversations pretty soon.
Eventually, I'll be a bot. But once the bot technology gets to the point where it's indistinguishable from me, and they don't know they're not chatting with me, then you'll probably be chatting with a bot.
Yeah. Well, we just got to get that technology from the richest man in the world now,
Elon
Neuralink.
Musk. Yeah.
Yes. So, and then soon your bot days will start, and then you'll never have to talk to me.
That's good. Yeah. Eventually,
I can't wait.
You're just going to hear us interviewing people, but we were never there. It was just a computer.
I mean, we're already there. Descript can do it.
That's true.
We just have to let's hire some writers and then throw it into Descript, and then they could voice it out, and then boom, we got a podcast now. No, we're not going to do that.
There you go. Maybe. We'll see.
Well, you would hire Fiverr writers, and like the not saying all Fiverr writers are bad. I'm not saying that, but
I'd hire the one that literally doesn't speak English, and you'll go and read it. Like the podcast announcer will just mispronounce everything.
It has to be machines doing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay,
like the machine announcer will read the script that somebody on Fiverr wrote, and it won't make any sense. Exactly. But it'll sound like me.
Matt sounds like a blend of all these different. I don't know what's going on out of his mouth.
All right. Well, we're off the rails now. We're almost half as long as our interview was itself.
All right. So would you rather be in shape and have a great body, but ugly face, or have a gorgeous face, but be overweight?
Oh
boy.
Probably be in shape with the ugly face. Because I mean, that's like sort of real life.
Wow. We just try to cover up your ugly face, your ugly mug with a beard and a hat and big ass headphones. You're doing a good job. But yeah, I would agree with that because you could probably sell some good stuff with a gorgeous face and I don't know. I want to be healthy. I like feeling healthy.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, our mugs.
Yeah.
We need some work.
You just grow a beard to hide the ugly face,
Exactly.
right? A beard, sunglasses, and a hat. That's my day-to-day look. So,
well, I know you signed up for Botox, so that's coming up soon in your future.
probably.
Probably.
Plastic surgery.
It's the on your schedule. We share a calendar.
Yeah.
You're getting some injections like all over. You're going to have a new nose pretty soon.
Yeah. Yep. Totally true.
No, it's oh, come on, Matt. Roll with me here.
Alrighty. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with somebody. There's a lot of people that would enjoy this episode as well, but they may never hear it. And if they don't, it's your fault.
Share it with the right people. Choose wisely.
Choose wisely. Choose widely. Share it with everybody.
Okie dokie, Matt. Is that what Andre and Shawn would say?
Yeah. Because then people will listen to
That's
it,
true.
and only the ones that are
They can
interested will
distill
go
and-
further down the rabbit hole.
All right, share it with the world. Get those megaphones out, y'all.
Yeah.
Go on the top of the
Write an
building.
email with a subject line with a lot of emojis and send it out with this
Megaphones and
episode.
headphones and say, listen to this right now. Your business. All right.
All right, let's
what
go
you
ahead
will.
and end this one.
Yeah, we're done. Bye now. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. For taking the time to listen, we want to give you something a little bit special. Every single episode that we do, we actually have somebody on our team take notes. We basically have a Cliff's Notes version of every episode where you can go and find all of the tips and tactics that they laid out, all of the resources that they laid out, all the good stuff from this episode. We actually have a nice simple notes version that you can find on our website. So go to evergreenprofits.com, find this episode that you just listened to, and give us your email address and we'll send you the notes.